Jim Cornette is a former wrestling manager, road agent, and personality. He worked for WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, NWA, and more. He currently hosts the Jim Cornette Experience and Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru, which are two of the biggest wrestling podcasts of all time. Jim Cornette in recent years, though, has gained a distinct reputation in the wrestling community for his conduct and the things he says. He is a very divisive figure in the wrestling community, and today we're going to be talking about some of Jim Cornette's biggest controversies. What's going on, guys? It's Tom, or Top 10 Wrestling, and welcome to the Jim Cornette Incidents. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, subscribe to Wrestle Club, and let's begin. In 2017, the National Wrestling Alliance was purchased by Billy Corgan, who had just came out of a strenuous attempt at purchasing TNA Wrestling, a whole ordeal that I'm not even going to try begin to explain. NWA began picking up though slightly, thanks to Billy Corgan and people like Nick Aldis. They were of course a part of All In 2018, with Nick Aldis defending his NWA title against Cody Rhodes, and having Cody Rhodes win the title was hugely beneficial for them for a time period, but after he lost the title back to Nick Aldis, NWA needed something new, something weekly. And in 2019, NWA Power was born, a weekly YouTube show showcasing wrestling in a TV studio just like how it used to be, with names such as Nick Aldis, Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, Thunder Rosa, Colt Cabana, Mr. Anderson, James Storm, Eli Drake, Allison Kay, Scott Steiner, and of course, Jim Cornette on commentary. On initial release, the show was heavily praised, including by The Rock, who praised Jim Cornette in particular, and having Jim Cornette on NWA Power was really big for the show because Cornette, like I said, his podcasts were massive and he's a very popular figure in the wrestling community. But I think we all know where this is going, because things would go downhill quick and Jim Cornette wouldn't spend too much longer with the NWA, as he took it upon himself to say the following about Trevor Murdoch.
Well, there's a handshake. I don't think that Aldis is taking this as seriously as he might should. Trevor Murdoch, he's mad, bad, and dangerous to know. He's the only man I've ever known that can strap a bucket of fried chicken on his back and ride a motor scooter across Ethiopia. Trevor Murdoch can take care of himself.
He's the only man I know that can strap a bucket of fried chicken on his back and ride a motor scooter across Ethiopia. So, yeah, Jim Cornette just said that. Why he decided to use those words, who knows, and why NWA decided to include it in the NWA Power episode despite them being taped is beyond me, and of course NWA and Cornette began to receive backlash over this joke, and people were dumbfounded by the fact it wasn't cut out. Cornette responded by saying that it wasn't a racist joke, but rather a joke about famine, and he would be resigning from his post on commentary for the NWA. He has not appeared for the NWA since. To my knowledge, he doesn't really talk about NWA on his podcast, and whether he really resigned or was pretty much asked to leave is unknown. In 1999, Cornette became part owner and head booker of Ohio Valley Wrestling, aka OVW. At the time, OVW was WWE's leading developmental territory, and Cornette's time in OVW was a huge success all around. WWE credit him with being one of the people who helped to foster stars such as John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, and Lesnar, people from that elite class of OVW wrestlers. And while working for OVW, Jim Cornette of course worked with many future WWE stars, and in typical Jim Cornette fashion, he did not get along with all of them. Cue in Anthony Corelli, the man who would go on to be known as Santino Marella. Corelli began training at OVW in 2005, and it wasn't quick for him to rub Jim Cornette the wrong way. In July of that year, he was in a storyline where he was supposed to act afraid of the boogeyman, but instead, Corelli no-sold him and laughed at him. This infuriated Cornette, who slapped Corelli backstage. Cornette was suspended for this and eventually fired from OVW. But the animosity between these two would not end there. In 2007, Corelli, who was now on the main roster as Santino Marella and had just had an Intercontinental title reign, publicly challenged Jim Cornette to a match. Jim Cornette, keep in mind, was working for TNA at the time. This was a real beef. And I once again cannot stress enough that even after a decade after 2007, the animosity didn't end, because we got this video just a few years ago.
I've never had respect for you to begin with. You were sitting there thinking, you don't need to settle in, but we got witnesses around here, and I ain't going to fight with you. Get the fuck out of my way. No, you did it the wrong way. When you shot a yes, you're became a goddamn show. Yeah, here's my job. You became a show. Yeah, there's a line. I do job. Because you couldn't do anything else. Because you were a fucking show. Get the fuck away from me. I'm trying to walk away from you. Hey, look at this guy. He's trying to start a fight with me, and I'm trying to walk away from you. Motherfucker, I don't have a...
Alright, let's briefly touch on some of the biggest happenings in Jim Cornette and Vince Russo's real-life feud. These two have been in a feud for near 30 years now. They absolutely despise each other, and there's so much to discuss, so I'm going to be doing a full video on this in the future. If you want to see that, smash the like button right now and let me know in the comments. But let's talk about some of the things that went on between these two. The origin of their disdain for each other comes from their times working together in the WWF and TNA creative teams. Cornette despises Vince Russo due to Russo's views on wrestling. Russo has always viewed wrestling as it should be similar to the Jerry Springer show, and there being more an emphasis on sports entertainment and storylines rather than in-ring action. The last time the two worked together was in TNA in 2009, where Jim Cornette left the company due to not supporting Russo's creative direction for the company, and since then, he's been a vocal critic and a hater of Vince Russo, to the point that in March 2010, Cornette sent an email to Terry Taylor, a TNA official, which said the following: "I want Vince Russo to die. If I could figure out a way to murder him without going to prison, I would consider it the greatest accomplishment of my life." TNA then sent this letter to a California law firm who characterized his comments as terroristic threats. And safe to say, Jim Cornette hasn't sent any emails to Terry Taylor about Vince Russo since. At least I'm guessing. Vince Russo got a restraining order against Cornette in 2017 after Cornette challenged him to a fight, which Cornette responded to by selling those restraining orders autographed by him on his website. He's also gone as far as to say that he will go out of his way to find Vince Russo's grave in order to urinate it, which is, yeah, this is something he said publicly in Dark Side of the Ring for all of us to see, that he wants to urinate on Vince Russo's grave, and he is very, very determined on it. There's a lot more than this, and there will be a future video, so don't you worry. If this video hits 1,000 likes, I'll release that full video in the next week.